Hey guys, so sorry it's been a while. I've been trying to finish up a PhD, so that's taken up most of my time. I also had a tank crash. It's a long story, but I accidentally brought velvet into my tank on a frag, which is just another reason to quarantine your corals, but I don't have a coral quarantining system set up. I know it wasn't on a fish because I hadn't added any fish. I'm really good about quarantining my fish. So I lost a lot of fish, and I pulled all my fish to treat them, including my wrasse, which was what was keeping my flatworms under control. So their numbers exploded. So then I stupidly added flatworm exit, and it caused a complete tank crash. And I lost basically all my SPS and a lot of LPS corals. So I was a little bit down in my tank, so I just let it run on autopilot for a couple months, which it's lucky that my tank is almost completely automated, so it can basically do that. But I'm back with new fish. The tank is almost completely recovered, and I'm slowly starting to add coral back in. But I also have a whole bunch of videos planned, and I have a new camera to take them on, so you guys don't have to watch cell phone videos anymore. But on the bench today, we have a DIY Vortech battery backup. So you can buy these for $160, but inside all it has is an 18 amp hour battery. So this is basically highway robbery. I am going to show you how to make a battery backup with, instead of an 18 amp battery a Group 24 Deep Cycle Marine battery backup. So you might be asking yourself, why use an $80 75 amp hour battery when the standard 18 amp battery will last you 20 hours on an MP60, 36 on an MP40, and 72 on an MP10. A 75 amp hour battery could power an MP10 for over 300 hours, or roughly 2 weeks, which is just ridiculous. But if you have two MP60s, then maybe that 18 amp hour battery is not going to be enough, because it'll give you less than 10 hours. And if you're running a Vectra pump, it's probably definitely not going to be enough, because all you're going to get out of one of these little batteries is about maybe 2 hours at full power, an L1 maybe even less, at an hour and a half, something around there. But with one of these, you should be getting around 8 hours at full power. So this size battery definitely has its uses. But if you just want to make a Ecotech battery backup with something on the more reasonable size, I'll show you how to do that as well. For around $60 or less, you can get it done, not quite this size battery, for around 40 or even less possibly. So let's get to it. So this Ecotech battery backup consists of a battery, a float charger, which is what your little plug-in adapter is, and a few cables, both inside the box and outside the box. So that's actually all we have to replicate when we want to make our own. So the first thing that we need to do is choose our battery. So I got a couple options here. This is a 10 amp hour battery, which is slightly smaller than what Ecotech uses, but if you're just running a couple MP10s, this might be plenty. This is what Ecotech uses. It's an 18 amp hour battery, so you can go with that as well, or you could do something a lot larger, like a Deep Cycle Marine. This is a 75 amp hour battery. All you need to make sure is that it's a sealed lead acid battery. So these will run you about 20, 30, and around 80, just to give you a price idea. So you're going to also need a box to store your battery in. These are sealed lead acid batteries, so hypothetically they're not going to leak, but we just want to make sure. I actually don't keep mine in a battery box. I really should. especially since it's on wood floors, and when they leak, they destroy the wood floors. But I'm going to be showing you how to do this DIY Ecotech battery backup with that big deep cycle 24 group battery. So I've got a 24 group battery box. These are like $8, and they're pretty sturdy, and they'll keep the battery acid in and just add a little bit of safety. And it'll also give us an area to mount all our wires. But if you don't want to go with a group 24 and you just want to use the 18 amp battery, you can pick up battery boxes that fit these as well. Or you could probably just go to your local Walmart or whatever and pick up Snapware, Tupperware, and mount your battery in that, and that'll work just as well. Or if you wait until we get to the charger part, I'll give you another idea for a battery box. So next we need to charge our battery. We can use a float charger just like the Ecotech does, and this is the charger that I believe came with the Ecotech. I think it's the older version, and now they come with a much beefier float charger. This is one that is either an Amazon one or a Harbor Freight one, but I'll put the link down below on the Amazon one. I don't get any money from the links, they're just to help you guys find the parts, but those are all down in the link down below in the doobly-doo. Alright, the second option for charging your battery is to use an old UPS, and as you can tell, I kind of collect the things. Whenever someone's throwing them out, I adopt it as my own. The benefit of using a UPS is you can often find them for free. You don't have to buy that float charger, but they also provide a very limited amount of 120 volt AC power. So just make sure that you don't plug anything that you don't need and is not critical into those battery backed up outlets so that you're not wasting your battery power. So this means almost certainly not a heater or something like that. But if you want to run something like your Apex head unit or a router, internet router or something like that, that's perfectly fine to plug into these. So also, depending on which UPS you choose, some of these can test the battery periodically and let you know when you need to replace your battery. Some of them can email you when you need to replace the battery, and some of them can even email you when you lose power, which if you don't have a controller would be very useful. And the Ecotech one costs more than any of these and doesn't do any of that. It'd be really nice if it at least told you when you need to replace the battery. So you can connect your UPS to a much larger battery like this 75 amp hour that I have here. And this is what I use. I'm gonna turn it off so it doesn't keep beeping at me. But this is what I use to power my Tunzi power heads and my modem and my router. You could also just use a battery backup in the batteries that are intended for the battery backup. But in order to match the power capacity of the Ecotech, you'll have to choose a larger UPS like this one. The problem with many of the larger UPSs is that they run two 12 volt batteries in series, which means that out here they're actually getting 24 volts. I'll move it up a little bit better so you can see. So you're actually getting 24 volts out of here because of this jumper. So if you see one with this jumper, that means we can't really use it because we need 12 volts, not 24 volts. Now, there is a way around this. If you're running two identical power heads at the same power, you can run one off each battery. Essentially, this right here is a 10 volt battery. It would essentially give you a 20 amp hour battery, 10 amps for each power head, which would be more than the Ecotech. So if you have two power heads that are exactly the same, you can plug one into each battery, and that will work. What you can't do is you can't plug, say, just a single MP40 on one side, because what you'll end up doing is you'll draw this battery down. This battery won't be drawn down, And then when the UPS goes to charge these batteries, one of them is completely uncharged, the other one's charged. It will overcharge one, damaging it, and it'll overcharge the one that hasn't been drawn down, damaging it by the time it gets the first one up to power. So that's what we want to avoid. So you can find larger UPSs that run off a single 12-volt battery. I just quickly popped on eBay, and within 5 minutes I was able to find one that runs off a 15 amp hour battery. That's not quite as much as the Ecotech, but it's pretty darn close. This is not one of those. This is one that I think is ugly and I had lying around, so I'm going to show you what you could do with one of those on this. So this is the much more common UPS that uses about a 8 amp hour battery. But these are very common and you can usually pick them up for free. And what I'm going to show you with this is how to connect it up through this battery. And we're just going to put our ports right on the frame of the UPS, so we don't need a battery box. So you get to skip that cost. And that way, if you pick up one of these for free, you earn it for 20 bucks for the battery, a few bucks in wires, and you can have a battery backup for a couple maybe MP10s for under 30 bucks, which is a pretty good deal. Alright, so next you're going to need some connecting wires and plugs. These are the Ecotech wires with built-in fuses. We could build our own, but I think these are like $1.50 or something off the Ecotech parts website. So pick up as many of those as you need to connect to your power heads. You will also need some, what are these? These are 1.35 millimeter by 3.5 millimeter panel or chassis mount female DC plugs, and put the link down below where you can find these. And if you're going to be using a trickle charger and not a UPS, then you will also need some what are these? 2.1 by 5.5 millimeter female plugs, and a 2.1 by 5.5 male plug. Usually come in a set of male and female plugs, and they are very cheap and they're useful to have around. If you're going to be connecting it up to a Vectra, you'll also need a Vectra battery backup booster, which you can also make yourself. It's just a 12 volt to 36 volt booster, but the Ecotech ones aren't too expensive, so you might as well pick up one of those as well. Hey, you're also going to need a few miscellaneous parts and tools. You're going to need a drill and drill bit to drill into your box or case, and I'm going to use a stepper drill bit just because I don't have to change drill bits. You also need some wire strippers with a built-in crimping tool or the equivalent. You'll need something to insulate the connections, so electrical tape, heat shrink, or liquid electrical tape. You'll need a soldering iron and some solder, and you'll need a little bit of scrap wire. You can either use off-the-shelf stuff, or you can scavenge some from an electrical cord. And a multimeter would be somewhat helpful, and then depending on whether you're going to use a big battery or a small battery or what you're going to use, you'll need some spade connectors or possibly some terminal clamps. Alright, so I'm going to start by showing you how to do this with the larger battery, and then I'll quickly do it on the UPS. So I think I'm going to put our ports right here, and we're going to need one port for the float charger and one port for every power head that we want to add or pump. So for this one, I'm just going to put in 2 ports. Alright, so the power port is going to be the larger of the two. It's going to take the incoming line from your float charger. Alright, so there's our first hole. Then the ones for the power heads or the pumps are the smaller ones. So now I'm just going to put those in. Gonna eyeball it. Alright, so we've got our ports in. Probably could have drawn a line on there to put them in straight, but that's okay. And we'll just flip them over and put on the retaining nuts that come with them. They also come with these little rubber waterproofing rings. So you can decide whether you want to put those in or not. Yeah, I don't know if that's too useful. I'm going to leave them off. Alright, you're going to want to make sure that when you put these in, you put the negative or positive pins on the same side. Let's see if we can get this to focus. Focus you. There we go. No. There we go. So there's going to be longer and shorter pins on those. The longer ones, at least for mine, were the negative side. So just make sure you have those the correct way. And that's where the multimeter comes in helpful to make sure that you're correct. So right here, this is just the continuity, so it beeps when it's when there's no resistance. So if I just put them together, it beeps. And the outside is the negative on these DC plugs, and the middle pin is the positive. So if we take this and stick the one probe on the outside, then we can determine which side is the negative side that we need to solder to. So the long one on these is the negative side. Alright, so the next step is to join all the negatives together and all the positives together. So I'm just going to quickly cut 3 equal lengths, roughly. And these will be for the negatives, and then I'll strip those. Alright, so I just decided to use a wire nut instead of trying to solder all these wires together. So one wire is going to go to the charging port, 2 wires are going to go to the outputs to the power heads, and 1 wire is going to go to the battery. So I'm going to crimp on a spade connector to go to the battery right now. And these wire strippers and crimpers have an insulated and non-insulated crimp section. You want to use the insulated on spade connectors. Well, anything that's insulated. Just give that a squeeze. Make sure it's on there good and tight. So that one's ready to go. And now I'm going to solder the rest of these on. So first I'm going to tin my wires. Okay, so I've tinned my wires. There's a good amount of solder on those. Now I'm just going to tin the negative connections here. Alright, so now we're just going to solder. Let's see here. We're going to solder these, and I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see, but we're going to solder these to the negative terminal. Alright, so I've got them all soldered on. I'm just going to add a little bit more solder just to keep them from coming off. Alright, so we've got the negative side soldered on. Let's see. It's not the prettiest job. I'm not a great solderer, but it will work. So now we just need to do the same thing to the positive side. Alright, so we got our second octopus here, and once again I'm going to throw a spade connector onto one of them. And now I'm just going to solder these up to the other side. So we will see if you will be able to see any of that, but I'm going to tin everything up and get it going. Alright, so we've got both the positives and negatives wired in place, and that's the end of the soldering, which I hate soldering, so that's good. Now I'm just going to use some liquid electrical tape because I like this stuff, and you just want to make sure that nothing is too hot because it is flammable. But this will just make sure that we don't end up shorting out any connections if I can get it open. And the reason I say that we definitely want to insulate these is because you can actually weld with 12 volts. These deep cycle marines would definitely melt all the metal in here. So if we just insulate them, that'll prevent that from ever happening. So just gonna dab a bunch on all the connectors. So now we just need to make our jumpers from these to the battery. So I've got two battery terminals here. Zoom in a little bit. So these are just crimp, and they have heat shrink already built into them. So we can heat shrink those. So I'm going to set this aside, let it dry, and grab some more wire, give myself enough to work with that I'm not pulling on any wires when I'm trying to take the lid on and off. And strip these. And on one side we're going to put on the female spade connector. And on the other side we're going to put on the terminal clamp. Alright, so now we got our 2 jumpers made. We'll bring our battery and battery box back up. Alright, so now we got our 2 jumpers and we have our lid. So now we're just going to connect the negative to the negative side, which is the longer side. So this one. And the positive to the positive side. And then our battery box is ready to go. So now all we need to do is connect up our float charger. And to do that, I thought we were all done with the soldering, but I forgot that we need to solder a plug onto our float charger. So I couldn't find any float chargers that had a DC style plug. They all seem to have these kinds of plugs. So we're just going to cut those right off. Come off a little bit more. And strip them back. And just solder red to red and black to black. Alright, one thing that I'm going to do, let's see, we'll zoom in here. Alright, so I'm going to offset these wires just a little bit so there's no chance of it shorting out across there. Oh, you can't see, can you? Alright, so we got our wires clamped together. And we're just going to solder them together. Gonna throw a little bit of heat shrink on. Not quite that much heat shrink. Not about that much heat shrink. There's one side. There's the other side. Alright, so there we go. So these two are soldered together, not going anywhere. Then we can just slide our heat shrink over top and give that a little bit of heat, preferably with an air gun, but heat gun, but this will work just as well. Alright, so now we got our cord. We've got our connecting cables. And we have our, oh, you're all zoomed in. And we have our battery backup. So you'll just take your float charger and plug it in, and plug it into that port. And we are now charging our battery. And take your Ecotech cables and plug them into the other 2 ports. Plug the other side to plug the other side to your two power heads. And just to show you that it's working, I'm not sure if these will actually go in. No, they're not going to go in. But we can go right here. So, oop. Alright, if I can do this without shorting it out, which I've done twice already. It's like that game Operation, and I was never very good at it. But maybe if I steady my hands on the side. Nope. Alright, there's 13 volts. I did it for a second. I hope you guys saw that. So 13 volts is what you're actually going to get out of these because the flow charger puts out a little bit more. But it's a pulsating 13 volts. So it's the same as 12 volts. If you the Ecotech power heads actually run off at 24. So they're being stepped down when you run it off your battery backup. But so this one's ready to go. And now I think I will wire up the UPS one just to show you how it's done. That one's going to be a lot quicker. There's a lot less things to do. Alright, so for the UPS version, we're going to need slightly less soldering and slightly less, you don't need a flow charger. So the first thing to do is to take the battery out. And set that aside. And then we're going to want to decide where we want the port. So we want it someplace close to the battery, but someplace that's not going to be in the way of the battery. So I think I'm going to aim for right there. And I'm just going to pop through and then I'll go from the other side. Alright, so our plug fits. I think I might solder this one. Yeah, I think I can get away with it. I'm going to solder this one outside because that was a pain soldering down in, and this one's going to be even worse. So we're going to solder 2 lead wires to this, and I'll make them about that long. And maybe a little longer. Alright, so we got our 2 lead wires. And we need to solder those up to our plug. And I turned my soldering iron off, so I have to wait a second until that heats up. Alright, hopefully the soldering iron is hot enough and ready to go that we can go ahead and solder these joints. All right. Oh, so ugly. God, I'm horrible at soldering. I probably am too impatient and don't wait for the soldering iron to heat up enough. That's usually the problem. Alright, so bring it back over our UPS. And don't forget your way of insulating. Apparently I just went by the bigger the gob, the better the job mentality. And stupidly I forgot to check which was the positive and negative. So I'll do that now. Take the negative to the outside. And alright, so it's this one. Yeah. It's this one. And so that negative is going to go to the black wire, positive to the red wire. So first we have to cut off the old spade connectors and strip the wire down. So these two are going to go together, and we're just going to take both of these and give them a little twist and stick them into a female spade connector and try to get them as on there as possible and crimp it down. And hopefully this works. Yeah, nope, okay. Try again. Okay, I found some bigger spade connections in my electrical connections collection, so we're going to try those now. Alright, we got it that time. Alright, so do the same thing for the positives. And crimp those down, and we're good to go. We'll take our battery, positive to positive, negative to negative, a little tighter squeeze this time. And this one is now good to go. And I can't show you that this one works because this battery is completely dead. And UPCs or UPSs don't like to, well, they don't run without a working battery. And this one doesn't even have any liquid in it anymore. It's completely bone dry. But this will work. This would probably work well for a single MP40 or maybe a couple MP10s if I had put another plug in there. So as always, thanks for watching, guys, and be sure to put any comments down below, and if you have any DIY ideas, definitely put them down below as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Hey guys, so I don't have any use for this battery backup because I don't run Ecotech power heads, and I could get rid of it locally, but if any of you guys are interested in it, if you comment down below that you want this, I will pick a lucky winner, or the only person who wants it, or the first person who wants it, and ship it off to you. I'm only in it for about 10 bucks, so another $5–10 bucks in shipping. I'm perfectly happy donating that to someone's reefing habit. It won't come with the battery because that would cost way too much, but you can buy a battery locally, stick it in, and have the beefiest battery backup anyone has around. So as always, guys, thanks for watching, commenting, and subscribing, and I'll see you on the next video.